So now, Whitney, there's a running. I don't know if it's a joke at this point. I think it maybe is a thing, an aspect, a trope, a structure of the podcast here, and that is for you to say you're new to tech, and so you bring some fresh eyes. It's a great little situation we got going there. So I wonder. It has been several years now, but you must have encountered this idea of like the 10x developer, like the supremely everything, they're like so much better, and like they just do the stuff and they do it well.
I've only actually ever heard it in the context of joking, of making fun of that person.
Right.
I've not used it, heard it used in earnest before.
Right. And so have you, like, what's your theory on this 10x developer? Have you encountered one of these? Have you encountered a 3x developer?
So who defines who's a 10x developer? Because it sounds like an ego-based thing. If someone thinks they're 10x, that means they have a big ego. That probably means they're not great to work with. It might mean they have a fixed mindset. Like, I definitely don't, especially, again, since I've heard it in the context of making fun of it, I definitely have a bad impression of the idea of someone who's a 10x developer.
Yeah. Well, I think, obviously, not obviously, but the first snarky thing to reply to with a snark is like, well, at what, right? Like what kind of, maybe they're really good at picking out irrelevant things. But yeah, I mean, I think I was thinking about one of the things to talk about with our guests this week. And there is like, there's a softer way of thinking about it, which is like, how much skill in your employees is like, I don't even know the right words, but it's sort of like a latent thing in there, like something that you can't like put into them after hiring them, or like something like that. Because an implication of a 10x developer is that like we have to hire this person because we couldn't create this person, or like there's something about them that's like magical. And I think that like, you see this, or maybe I see this, because who knows what weird things I see when I look at normal stuff. But like, you see, there's this notion in the tech industry that it's like really hard to find people to hire, right? And so this is kind of like towards this idea of a 10x developer. We're like, oh, there's just not enough of them to go around, and like so it makes me think like how much truth is there to like we have to hire the right person because they have this skill set or this ability beyond just like, whatever. They know how computers work. We'll train them.
So Richard, hello, welcome to the show. Will you introduce yourself, please, and tell us your experience hiring 10x developers?
Yeah, I'm Richard. I'm a 10x developer. I think 10x development is like calling yourself attractive. Like if it's labeled on you, it's fine. If you say it about yourself, you're a schmo. So I think somebody can call you 10x because you are just that much. Look, talent is not evenly distributed. We know that. In sports, we know that. In all sorts of forums, like everyone doesn't have the same skill. Clearly, there can be people in tech or writing or media or whatever. They're just really naturally good at something. I think that's okay. Does that person mean you don't have to hire 9 other people because that one 10x developer does the work of 10 people? Maybe in certain settings. I am not that person. I am a political science major who somehow turned into a techie and then has spent 25 years trying to prove it at this point. So, now I work at Google as a title is chief evangelist, but I run developer relations and tech writing for cloud. And for that, Cote and I caused some problems together at Pivotal and VMware and doing marketing. I've done product management, architecture. I have never taken the same job twice, which now means I'm running out of things to do next. I don't know what can be next. I'm running out of possible job titles, but I enjoy playing with tech and trying to help other people know whatever I know.
And so that's what was that kind of long career was making me think about this. I was listening to the interview you and Brandon did in 2000, not 2000, 2020.
2020.
That would have been a long time ago. The 2000 interview would have been fascinating. But I mean, just as you said, right? Like you have there's three things that made me think of this. One, you've had a lot of jobs, and as you said, started from like not accidentally, but just kind of falling into stuff. Like I think a lot of people in the 2000s did. Like you said, the word file maker, which I think is indicative
That's right.
of a lot of self-taught programming. But and then two, you let's just say accidentally, but you kind of wandered into the space. And then two, you've had a lot of different jobs at different parts of the tech industry, right? From consulting to like, when we were supposedly causing trouble, marketing, and then actually programming. So all these different things. And then three, I think you've worked at some interesting places that would have this sort of like, we've got to hire the right people, right? Like now, you've been at Google a long time, right? And they seem to be interested in hiring good people. And so like there's a notion of like, how do you calibrate on this person is at least a 1.7x or something like, and I don't know. I don't know how to like philosophically think about that beyond like, they know how to program, but there's something not quite right about it. That doesn't make them this superior, this better hire that we would have.
Yeah, I mean, we're, I guess, known for our hiring process here and how somewhat ludicrous it is. But I mean, you are trying to sometimes find some of these intangibles in that process. But what's the interview question that helps you find out if they're 10x, 2x, minus 3x? Like, how do you find out if they're either the team player or, I mean, honestly, nowadays, at this point, I'm hiring people who've, our friend Andrew Clay Schaefer used to say, have you learned how to learn? I think I hire people who know how to learn. Because everything I'm hiring you for skill-wise is probably not even as relevant as what I need you to know next. And so if you're very fixed mindset, like I'm brilliant at writing C++, and that's like I live and breathe it, maybe that's exactly what the job needs. And honestly, increasingly, I'm going to need you to also know something else. And if I'm fighting you the whole time, you're not a 10Xer.
I've been applying to jobs, and there's a lot of people want AI skills these days.
They do.
And it's not possible. I don't feel like it's possible for the workforce to possibly accommodate all the demands for AI skills. Anyone who says they have AI skills have just learned their AI skills. That's my theory. Is that correct?
It's very correct. I mean, look, if anyone says they're not faking it till they make it right now in AI, they're just liars. Like, yes, there's 10x or data science people who've been doing ML for 30 years, and there's plenty of people who've been doing AI, but it's actually a pretty small population. So most people are in just hyper growth, learn stuff, play stuff, figure it out, or just LinkedIn thought leaders who are just coming up with some really good sound bites. Like, that doesn't feel like it has any depth to it. So this is an amazing time to learn. For me, I do a lot of customer briefings and things and try to think about when someone even says I'm learning AI, I don't even know what you mean. Like there's data science stuff. Like I'm literally doing linear algebra. I'm doing TensorFlow and JAX and all these sort of frameworks. Okay, amazing. You're a unicorn. There's not many of you. Cool. There's sort of AI platform people who are like, hey, I'm running this in Kubernetes or I'm doing other things. I'm serving models. I'm throwing vector databases out there. Cool. You're like doing platform engineering for AI people. Then you get into like, I'm building AI apps. I'm using LangChain. I'm doing these frameworks. I'm calling managed services. I'm building smart chat things because we need more chatbots apparently. And then you get to the very top, which is like, I wish our team was more productive. Can we add like AI assistance to our tooling in Workspace or Office 365 or Copilot or Cursor? Like I'm just trying to use AI to build more output. All of those have wildly different audiences, product maturities, skill sets. And so when someone says, hey, we have an AI strategy, it's like, cool, what do you mean by that? Or I want to learn AI. What are you talking about? And so I think it's good. This is an era of hyper curiosity if you're really legitimate about this.
I have a question about hiring in general. In all your experience hiring people, is there a time where you've gotten it completely wrong? And if so, what red flag or flags did you miss in the hiring process?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I wish I had hired Cote, so I could have said that was a disaster, but I did not. I inherited him.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've probably been the disaster hire once or twice, but when I think of the people who didn't work out, look, and if people say it, hiring manager owns this too. Whenever you fire someone, it's still on you as a manager. Like you messed up somehow. Either you didn't coach them well, you brought them into the wrong role. Like just saying, wow, they're a real schmo. Were they when you hired them? Like, did you put them through going, oh, they're a complete disaster, but they'll be my bottom 5%, so that's cool. No one hires that way. And so anytime you let anybody go, that's on you as a manager. Like you did something wrong. But I've hired wrong for, good people for the wrong role multiple times. Honestly, even as I initially built this outbound product management function at Google, I was hiring some people who were traditional PMs because like, oh, let's try this new outbound thing. And it didn't really work out, not because they weren't great, but because they felt weird doing go-to-market stuff. Like, well, can I spend more time with engineers? Not the job. And so in those cases, it was the wrong hire, not because they weren't great people. And many of them actually then moved into other PM jobs and they're awesome at Google. So they're great elsewhere. They just weren't great for me because I was asking them to do something that just didn't fit their skill or desire. So that's hard to test. I felt like I interviewed well with them and they said all the right things. But then once you do the job, we're making like life decisions with 3 hours of conversations of interviews.
I know.
Like it's kind of pretty silly. And we are making like maybe decade-long impact choices based on like 4 calibrating questions of like, have you had a bad boss before? Or tell me about your favorite cat. Like this somehow tells me enough about you to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in my sense of success. It's shocking how cavalier we are with that.
It's a lot from the hiree side too, to manage a lot, like even a few 3 or 4 hour interviews going at once. Yeah. But I'm going to dig one more time into the same question as before, because I want to hear like a colorful disaster story. And you just told me something that was uplifting in the end.
Yeah, that's true.
If you don't have that's okay.
I'm still giving you the sandwich of stuff.
Yeah.
I got to go back a few so no one can identify themselves.
Okay.
So if I go back a few jobs, I can think of someone who I hired who I was urgent because I needed to hire a person in the team. And in this case, I was hiring almost the first warm body that made it through the process. And in this case, it was just from day one, it was like, wow, they're in over their head. They didn't really even have the domain expertise I really needed. I was hoping that they could convert what they knew into this. And so I think anytime you realize you're spending like 25% of your week coaching someone, like I'm hurting the rest of the team. And that's why I'm personally terrible about knowing when to let someone go. Because I always want to go like, another shot, let's go. I love them, they're going to make it. And then I realize I've just screwed the other 10 people on the team who've been picking up all the slack or struggling with that person socially, whatever it might be. We always seem to over-rotate on the struggling person because we're trying to be maybe helpful, kind, whatever. And we're completely shafting everyone else on the team who's just like, please switch something, you're killing me. And so in this case, it was just a complete anchor on the rest of the team. And what are we doing here? And so help them find something else. And that was, still want to do the right thing for the person, but oftentimes it's way too late in my experience. We all just wait too long.
And so the red flag really wasn't a red flag. It's just like when you retrospect about that bad hire, you're like, oh, it was because it was a rushed process that I didn't do as much, that I kind of looked over some things. I was expecting more of them, that they would convert. Like they could take this knowledge and convert it to that. I've never had an experience where like a day after I hired them, I realized they have a freezer full of cat heads. It's like, oh gosh, this person's a psycho. What have I done? Never had that. So, when you ask the "What's my favorite cat?" question.
Yeah, like you could see my garage freezer right now. Oh, it's a disaster. So I've never had that problem.
Or they just microwave fish at lunch for exactly. every day.
Yes. Right. Yeah, barely wear pants to the office. Like there's a lot of red flags I should be paying attention to.
Yeah. So you're getting close to it, kind of making me remember. You're among people who have worked for you. I always hear that you're very good at career management for them, and oftentimes I know you're much further than this, but oftentimes that means doing anything. There's a lot of managers who don't do much at all, but however, I hear you do very much, and I've seen evidence of it here and there. But like, there's some obvious stuff, or maybe it's not obvious, but what do you think the things are that managers miss about career management, like tactically, like things that you often see other managers not actually doing? There's the like coaching people to be aware of a career helping them out through it, opportunistically doing stuff. But like, what are like the tools people don't use very much, managers use very much?
Yeah, I think so many folks. Maybe I just did a manager kickoff for my team last week, just for the year of like, hey, what are we doing this year? And I think being supervisors is an okay starting point for a lot of people. Like, hey, make sure you don't burn the house down. Does everyone have work assigned to them? Like, you need that at some point. But a lot of managers in titles stop there. And it's just like, I'm doling out work. I'm working at the grocery store, making sure who's showing up on their shift. It's an okay form of day-to-day management. But I think a lot of people who even are legit managers at normal companies, because I'm just managing day-to-day. And I'm not stopping to say, like, what do you hate about your job? What are you trying to do next? Hey, can I put you in front of opportunities so you can actually, make something happen? At the same time, though, and I don't like when individuals assume their manager or their company will drive their career for them. I hate that level of lack of empowerment. It's like, well, I'm not getting anywhere because my manager's terrible. Maybe, or you haven't put yourself in the right position. So can you also coach people to own it? Find stretch opportunities. Hey, skip over me and talk to my manager more often. Or, make sure you've built a network, socialize your work, like own your career. Don't ever bet on a manager, because some companies, Google does this from time to time. We rotate people. You might have 2 managers in a year. I don't want to hitch my wagon to one person knowing they might not be here for 5 years managing my career. So some of it's taking a very, very active stance. Can I put you in better positions? Can we actually even have the conversation about what you're trying to do? Can we invest in learning? Can I be finding spots for you? Giving that kind feedback that might not be nice. Hey, that presentation didn't land at all. And it's not because you're terrible. It's because your intro took 5 minutes and no one cares about your background. Jump to the meat. Like, let's get going on it. And so nobody likes kind feedback. We all want to give nice feedback. Oh, you're amazing. And then you get a crappy review at the end of the year. It's like, how did that happen? So that sort of stuff. But then really still flipping it back to the person, go like, what are you doing for yourself? Because I don't own your career. I could leave tomorrow. You could leave tomorrow. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I still ask that of myself in my 40s.
The examine life. You got to have that.
It's easier to help people who help themselves. Yeah.
I've learned that I don't manage people with 2 characteristics. People without self-awareness really struggle with. Like when they just have no sense of like, well, you make everyone uncomfortable, or you really thought that was great work. Like that's really off. So I really struggle with lack of self-awareness. And then I struggle with people I can't depend on. Like those are my 2, like I probably declare bankruptcy on you at some point if I can't count on you over and over again. We all make mistakes. But if like repeatedly, I'm not sure you can deliver, at some point I have to check out on you if you can't do those two things.
I relate to that a lot. But then what happens? Here's a question in my own life. So when there's someone who's difficult for me to be around, what I do is I just choose never to be around them. And I don't have a situation where there's someone who's difficult to be around and I'm forced into being around them daily or often. So in this situation you just described, where you have someone you're managing who has qualities that you just can't cope with, what do you do when that happens? Because you can't just leave.
Yeah, if they're a direct report, I got problems. Like if they're 2 levels down, I might just not see them that often, and I help their manager maybe manage them. But even then, look, we're all working, I think all of us, in somewhat constrained environments where we're not just, our companies aren't throwing headcount at things. And so you've got to manage the team you have. And if anybody's not pulling their weight, maybe they're only a 2Xer, not a 10Xer, then maybe you do have to make some changes. And so I've encouraged my managers, like, look, if you do have to let someone go, I will give you the backfill. I won't steal it for somewhere else, because I don't want you to hold on to the person because I just need the body. That's terrible management. And so, and we do it all the time. Like that's old before the cloud, right? You used to build the biggest honking servers you could because then no one could steal it from you. I think Werner Vogel said, when a server is easy to give up, it's also easy to acquire. Like it changes your whole mindset. If I can easily get a VM, I'll give up a VM. And same with people. If I can, let someone go because they're just not the right fit, but I know I can replace them, I'll probably manage better. So if I'm stuck with them as a direct report, some of these things can be discussed, or frankly, you just have to manage out or help them find another role. Because if we're just going to keep clashing and it's going to be like, that didn't work, and they say that was unbelievably great work, we're just going to keep completely being off base. And I don't think you can work that way.
I have a question that's only tangentially related, but you talked about like letting someone go and for a chance for something better. And I'm wondering about like in your long and varied career, there's got to be times where you were doing something that was pretty good, that was cool, but you knew it was time to let it go to pursue something better. What's an example of when that happened, and how do you know? I think it's easy to get rid of something bad to find something good, but that middle ground of getting rid of something decent to find something great is hard.
Yeah, I mean, when do you know it's time to cut bait? Like, that's the hardest part. I've never left a job that I didn't like, which may be a weird thing to say. Like, I've done close to rage quitting one time, but even then it was very cordial. But like, I've never just been like, everybody sucks here, I'm out. Like, that hasn't been the case. Usually I leave jobs when something feels stagnant. Either me professionally, like I've hit my ceiling, I have nowhere else to go. I'm not really learning anything new. I'm just literally, a monkey with symbols saying the same thing every day, and I don't feel challenged. Or if the company just feels like they're just kind of going. So that just doesn't work for me. Like, I need to feel like, hey, I've got another gear that I can go find, and it's just maybe not here. I really want to learn something new and challenge myself. And so I usually take jobs that I'm not fully qualified for entirely. Obviously, I'm somewhat, or they wouldn't hire me. But like, something that feels like a stretch, something that feels somewhat uncomfortable, that's what I aim for. So it's usually not because the current company was bad. It's just maybe I just need to mix it up. I get bored fast. And so I need to keep doing something that I'm trying something new or doing whatever. And it's worked well so far. I mean, none of these have turned out bad, which is shocking. And I stay everywhere for like 4 or 5 years. I'm not switching jobs every 2 months. But, at that point, usually I've just kind of hit a wall, or just felt like, am I adding value the same way anymore or not? And so I usually switch roles every 18 to 24 months, usually within a company if I can, just to kind of keep mixing it up and make sure that, I don't know, you want my best work. Like, we all get paid decently well. I don't want to do a bad job or an average job. I want to do something that makes me uncomfortable.
I agree. And I feel like as long as I'm present and I do my best, then whatever happens after that, it happens. If it's bad, if it's good, I can take that because I know that I tried my best. And
there's big swings. Look, I mean, I'm not moving to the Netherlands or anything and then just hoping for the best. I mean, some people do that. But like, there's times where, like, what's the worst case? Like, when I've left a number of jobs and moved to something else, like, what's the worst case that when I leave the company I was at and join Pivotal, like, look, the last 3 jobs I've taken, it's actually been a demotion. I've taken a lesser role than I had, like a VP to individual marketer, VP again to an individual at Google to whatever. And each time I've gone backwards 3 or 4 times now. I don't really care because I usually see a higher ceiling in the next thing. But what's the worst case? Like, it didn't turn out perfectly. All right, maybe I'm in a company where I can go find something else. Like, I'm not selling off all I have and like moving to the Caribbean and hoping that I can make it, as a boat driver. Like, I feel like I've got backup options. And usually I'm not that reckless, but I think as long as you feel like you have a support structure, you feel a little more courageous to make these moves.
So we were talking to Brian Gracely of the Cloudcast, things like et cetera, last episode, and one of the things that seemed, he equally has a kind of a generalist vibe about him, the ability to flit around and do different things, and one of the things that seemed, I don't know, it got me thinking that if you're going to be in a role like that, as you kind of said earlier, you've got to do a little bit of your own PR and publicity management. Like, the more, obviously internally at a company, it's good. But the more of a celebrity, if you will, or awareness of you outside of the job and in the industry, like, I don't know, I think the easier it is to like move around and be a generalist with things versus like, I guess it's valuable for like, if you're whatever the opposite of a generalist is, a specialist. Very good.
There is a word for it.
Yes. I don't know, but like, how maybe in general, but then for certain roles, like, how much time do you recommend people spend on like their own PR, on sort of like building up their reputation and their just their reputation and their stuff?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a debatable topic for so many people. Like, they bristle when you hear like, build a brand for yourself. Like, that's gross. I don't want to have a a brand. I'm just a regular human. Look, yeah, I have a disaster of a resume when you look at, like, I'm not an expert at anything. Like, I can't say I'm a 10-year PM or a 10-year marketer or a
Can you
10-year this.
say
I'm just
you're a 10x generalist?
I'm a 25-year technologist. Like, it is what it is. So to me, if you don't shape the narrative, especially now with whatever AI robots are reviewing resumes, where does my resume go into any job cycle? And they go, total fit. Like, I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff on my weird LinkedIn and resume stuff. So unless you're creating what the narrative should be for you, this is why I publish a blog or why I do stuff on social media. A, because I like it. I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it. But if you don't shape the narrative around what you bring to the table as a generalist or whatever, there's no way anyone guesses this. And I've actually had a number of friends now who've been out of, in the job market now, looking around, and they kind of fit some of that generalist vibe, but there's like no public profile for them. And they have a harder time getting a call back because it's like you're applying to be a whatever manager, IT leader, partner manager, whatever. And somebody looks and goes, not a lot of history there. So to me, I want someone to do a Google search and be able to find something about me that looks interesting. I'd swear my last 3 jobs came from my public profile, just because I learn in public. You know what you're getting. And if you don't like it, move on. And if you think this is somewhat interesting and could be useful, then people know what they're getting from me.
Speaking of your public profile, can we talk about your daily reading list? Will you describe that to our listeners?
Yeah, so I read a lot every day, and I've been building up an RSS feed for years now. So, hundreds of things I like to flip through. And so for the longest time, I would just post on the artist formerly known as Twitter, and it'd be like every day, just share stuff. And, as social media got weird a couple of years back, it's like, I don't know if I want complete lack of control over where I share. Like, what happens if this goes down or this pops up? Like, I want something I own. And I've been blogging for 20 years now, every month. And well, how about I just collect what I've read every day? My goal is to not hoard knowledge. You should know what I know. Like, if my value is I'm hoarding knowledge, and I'm terrible. My value should be that I can synthesize stuff I've learned and maybe do interesting stuff with it, but you should know what I know. So can I write down, here's everything I read today. Here's maybe a quick summary of it. And I started that a couple years ago, publish it every weekday. I do it in the evenings just to be countercultural because everyone likes to publish their lists in the morning. It's like, suck that. So I'm going to do it at the end of the day. This is what I read
You
today.
rebel, you.
Somebody's got to fight the man. And so I do that, and it's just, I make it a routine. Like, look, I know from about 6:30 to 8 every morning, I read tech news or digest it or whatever. I'll still schedule stuff on Twitter X to post throughout the day, or I'll post it myself. And then at 4:45 every day, I write a summary and click publish. None of it's AI, none of it's robots or Oompa Loompas. It's just me doing it by hand. Because to me, there's multiple value points. Yes, it puts me out there a lot, but I don't really even look at subscriber counts or who opens it. The metrics don't matter to me. I just want to put it out there. But honestly, it's really useful professionally. Like, I go do customer briefings, and there's the sort of things that are top of mind are just always there. I just find in this industry right now, paying continuous partial attention gives me really rapid recall. And I'm not just sitting here fumbling for like, oh gosh, what is going on in this? Like, I'm just kind of always somewhat keeping attention going on. So it's not a lot of work to have to quickly summarize stuff because it's always out there.
So is it the reading itself that's giving you that, or do you think it's important that you have the output of the blog entry with the 10 links or so?
The reading, of course, helps, and frankly, keeping social things open all day and keeping an eye on things professionally. But I think, don't we all learn
social accountability? Yeah, even
if you take notes by hand, don't teachers say this, like it puts it in your brain more. So just writing it down forces me to think about what was that article about and what was that. So yeah, I don't want to just be that superficial.
I do love that your links have a 1-sentence synopsis or your opinion or what about it caught your attention. For those, like, would you say they're about 10 links each day? Does that feel about right?
Yeah, my goal was I was going to start with like 4 or 5, and that turns into sometimes like 10 to 12. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to publish that a lot.
Do you? How many articles do you actually read to get 10 that you want to share?
I try to be fairly intellectually honest that those are there's not a ton I'm reading that doesn't make it in the list unless it's like a sports article. Like, no one cares about my Padres but me, fine. But when it's tech news or, even competitive stuff, like, I'm trying to be fair that I'll link to an interesting thing from Azure, or VMware just did something cool at Broadcom, or hey, Amazon shipped a really cool paper. I'm a homer. I'm not going to apologize for it for who I work for. But there's a lot of cool stuff happening. And if I'm just a shill for what I do, I don't like that.
Do you read the full articles of all 10, or do you?
I speed read a lot.
3/4. Okay.
Some of these are monstrous. And so can I read headings? Can I get the gist? And I do read fast, but I'm not reading every word of each one. It's too much.
That helps me. So I get overwhelmed by the amount of information, and I tend to just like, I don't know if it's my personality or my inexperience in tech, Cote, but I get overwhelmed, and I tend to only seek out what I need. I go slow and I go deep and I'm hearing from you some of the values and benefits of understanding a little bit of everything, paying half attention. But I think I would love to hear a little more about how your information filtering system works, so I can maybe adopt some of those tips and tricks for my own information consumption.
Yeah, the hard part is what should you actually pause on? It's such a hard question, right? Because you'll see a headline, be like, do I really care about this? And there's a cost to all of it, even if it's a cost of 15 seconds of my time or a distraction. So for me, I cast a fairly wide net in my domain, but every year I really declare bankruptcy on certain topics I'm not going to focus on, sometimes mentally. Like I've tried for 10 years to be like, maybe front-end framework should be my thing. I hate front-end frameworks. They bore me. I can't get it. I'm not good at UX. Like I can't get into it. So while I might look at a headline about Flutter, Angular, React or something, I'm not going to go deep on it. I don't care. Like it just doesn't move me a ton. So certain things maybe, but I'm still a server-side web cloud person. And so those things that come by, like, hey, what's interesting or what's controversial, right? Where is there like a countercultural point someone's making? Love that. Same with Agile stuff. Or Cote, you and I have been looking at DevOps platform engineering stuff for a decade now. Sometimes when I see someone come at it with a really like, that's a hot take, I like that. Like, what is challenging my assumptions? I don't read a lot that just reinforces what I know. I do try to skip like the basics. Here's Kubernetes 101. Good. I'm going to skip that. I know it. Tell me why Kubernetes is a failed choice for the edge. All right, what do we got there? Let's see what we got. So I'm looking for something that stands out, not just reinforcing what I already know.
Yeah, I think that's a good start of the filter. And what I was interested in hearing how you calibrate on this, but like there's a certain level of novelty, of newness to it, right? And Whitney and I were just talking before this, how like I've kind of run out of both things to say and the will to say anything about platform engineering at this point. Like, I don't know, but professionally, I should probably fix my head about that. But like, as kind of like an ongoing case study. So, you obviously find a lot of AI stuff interesting, and, mostly generative AI stuff, or if we want to be all nerdy about it. Like Simon Wilson, where like every single thing you sort of like log it and do some kind of like technical analysis of it. I mean, in a very blog form. But I think that's an example of, I guess there is a lot of novel stuff in AI, but like you managed to link to a lot of them. and like, are you, like, I'm always, not always, but I sometimes imagine when I read those, like when are you linking to something that is a news item versus what we were just talking about is like this new thing that's interesting versus other categories I'm not thinking about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a mix of, I don't know, a lot of my shtick, and I think it's because I'm still a self-conscious non-techie pretending to be a techie, is what makes people feel smarter. Like to me, for example, I try to tell our DevRel team this. Your goal as a presenter is not to make everyone think you're smart. It's to make them feel smarter. To me, that is the hallmark of a great presenter. And so try to do the same thing in content. Like if I link to a white paper that says, I think I'm doing it today or yesterday on the DeepSeek stuff, new model, very disruptive, what's going on with that? Yeah, go read the paper. Like I can also share a TechCrunch link about why DeepSeek is freaking out NVIDIA or OpenAI, but go look at the paper. Like I don't want to just do superficial news headline stuff because it's the overview. Right. What's the real stuff? Give me the data about the survey of what Dora is really doing, or what's happening here with the dev survey, or what's the actual white paper. So the only thing I try to do a little more, and I know you mentioned there's topics you just feel burnt out on, is I always try to remember there's always someone reading about this topic for the first time. And so while I am bored to death on that topic, I will still often include 101 level stuff in that reading list because I want someone who's coming to it for the first time to not be like, you must be this tall to read the reading list. No, we're all figuring it out together. Yeah, some of these things build on each other, but I don't want to all be advanced stuff because we're all not smart about something. And so can we all kind of come together? So a little bit of superficial, like here's the headline from TechCrunch, VentureBeat, sounds good. But I don't want to do a lot of news. I'd rather do the deep dive on here's the case study on how I did DevOps at scale. Here's how I'm doing AI in this business. More interesting to me because that's humans, not just a journalist.
Yeah, you know the way I think about that kind of is, you don't want to just link to or talk about like what happened. You want to go like why it happened and the context and things like that, because the whatting can be had in anywhere at links. Well, unrelated, even though if people are watching the video, they can't tell now, but both you and I wear glasses, and I'm due to like get some new glasses. It's kind of like, well, I don't think either of you suffers from this, but every now and then I wake up and I find myself like itching my beard, and I go look in the mirror and I've turned into a hobo. When did that happen? And I got to get a haircut. And I was looking at my glasses the other day and they're all like marked up, and I don't know, I need some new ones. But I don't want to go do it because it seems like getting glasses is such a hassle. Like why is it so difficult to like get glasses? Shouldn't it be like getting your ears pierced or something, which should be relatively easy?
Face. That's the problem. You're picking a new face, and I got to stare at this face for how long? And then if you make the wrong choice, like there's ramifications. Like you could get fired, like all kinds of things. It's just nobody...
if you walk in with like red tinted glasses, you're like you're out.
Yeah, this guy, he's bad. A quick question for you, Cote. How is your vision in your dreams? Are you also fuzzy vision when you sleep, or do you have glass equivalent when you dream it?
I don't think so. I got glasses late in life because I had LASIK, and I've only in the past couple of years gotten glasses because the place I went, they said that this is a summary. They said it in much more detail, but they were like, you're too old to get LASIK. Like, unless you want to suffer in this other way. And so right. So I didn't get it updated. And I almost feel like if I'd gone to an American doctor, they would have been like, sure, we take credit cards.
Yeah, exactly. Got some laser pens. We'll do it right now.
Yeah.
As far as what glasses you choose, I think you should consider like who in your life looks at you the most, because you don't look at yourself all that often, really.
Exactly.
Not.
And it should be up to them, I think.
Yeah.
And also just how drastic you want to change. Like I've had continuity now for a while on it. Like if I just went completely to like rimless glasses where all you just saw was my face, it freaked me out. Like I need
like tiny little circles.
Aviator frames,
Yeah, I'm a pale guy. I need contrast in my face. So,
but I also feel like not only the selecting, but like getting an appointment and then like waiting for the glasses, and like maybe I just need to go to more of a boutique thing. But I feel like maybe the levels of like I had a friend who said like there's a special place in hell for tow truck drivers, and which is an extreme way of putting it. But in that kind of like ranking. People, there's a person at the end of the block that if you don't throw away your trash, they take a picture of it and you get a ticket, which is
not good. Yeah.
I don't know. Seems like a terrible way to live your life, giving out those tickets. But, buying cars always feels a little skeevy. Everyone's just living their life, doing their job, but it's an awkward situation unless you're into that. And I feel like maybe a few notches above that is like going to the glasses store, right? And like, I don't know if those people are like helping me or not. Like it's a weird
they're just flattering you, so you'll hurry up and choose one.
Do you need someone to come with you? Because that person's like, those look great on you. Like these are kids' glasses. Like you didn't even tell me. I'm shopping in the child section. Like, so,
there's a choo-choo train on the side.
Yeah,
maybe there's a similar thing to cars. Maybe this is my problem. Is I don't know what the right pricing and quality is, right? Because you can go look at glasses, and at least I can, and there might be like 4 different glasses that are basically the same, and then there one of them is like 5x the cost. It might even be 10x, and then the other one is just like not at all. And like I don't know. And then do you get the scratch resistance? Like what are all these things?
Get the rust undercoating on them. Like I don't even know what features they're throwing on this. Yeah.
I think the risk isn't high. You could go to somewhere like inexpensive, like Zinni, where you order online and it's $30 a pair and you get 5 pair and you just know 4 of them aren't going to work out.
Yeah.
And then when you like, you double down on an order.
I mean, they have
3
these
sets.
apps now, right, with the AI stuff where they'll like throw them on your face, and like that's helpful because you go to the glasses store and nobody talks about this, but they all have, of course, just dummy lenses in them. So I'm already like legally blind. So when I put on a pair of glasses,
You can't see
I don't know if these look good. Like I'm looking at a fuzzy version of myself. These are terrible. So,
you know, and that's what I what drives this ongoing quandary in my head is like it just seems like a way of buying a thing that should not exist now, right? That it would be better just to get like mailed a box of stuff, or even if you went to the store, they would just be like, "Here's a box of stuff," right? Like,
there you go.
I think that's a thing, Cote. I think.
Oh, right. But there's still lots of glasses stores around. Like it still like persists as a strange thing.
Those will be here till the end. Mattress stores, glasses stores. Like we always just need a lot of mattresses and glasses, I think, in society.
As an aside, I need a new car. And I've hired a car concierge. I hired a person to buy the car for me, to show me options and to do the negotiating and because in the past I've done it myself, but it's involved a lot of research to feel like I'm getting a good value, and then also to know the tricks of how they're also going to make money on me with all the upsells so I didn't want to do all that work this time. Instead, I hired.
You'll use AI in a few years, but you can hire a concierge now.
Yeah, he's like, okay, buy at the end of the month because they're going to be anxious to make quota. And in January, they're trying to hit a quota on quantity of cars, not on price cars sold. So it's a good month. Like all this industry knowledge that I already feel is added value to my experience.
Expertise still matters. So I still love working with experts. Why am I trying to do it myself?
I guess I'll look up a glasses concierge and
exactly.
see what they can help me with. So another thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is Wardley maps. Now, have you read up on these, Whitney?
No, what's a Wardley map?
Well, it's we were talking about strategy last time. It's a way of figuring. Correct me if I get this wrong, Richard, but it's a way of basically figuring out what we should focus on as a business based on how commodified or common other components are versus like this is the thing that we're good at and that we specialize in and we get differentiation. It's kind of like where we're going to be different and where we're going to compel people to do it. And it's called a map because you have a big, I was going to say flat piece of paper. I don't know what other kind of paper there would be. You've got like a plane, if that's the right term. And I forget the axes exactly, but more or less up and to the right is like, these are the things we should specialize in. And way back when did they become popular? In the serverless era? Like at the beginning of like cloud stuff, the idea was you should be not running your own infrastructure because there's nothing differentiating about it. And here's an example of doing that on a Wardley map. Now, that's a very slapdash. Is that a good overview?
Yeah, no, it sounds good to me. I mean, I think there's the point of some of those sort of tools is not just giving you a static look at like, here's the landscape. It's like, well, here's movement. Here's things that are moving towards commodity.
That's right.
Or here's that you're trying to get a sense of. And again, these things are never accurate. They're just a lens of things. It's always still speculative.
I think it's also an underappreciated thing of tools like this is like, it kind of doesn't matter what's on the paper at the end. What matters is that you did all the work to get to it.
Is it about the product you make and how you fit into someone else's system? Or is it about your own system and what you need to build yourself versus what you should get a tool for?
More the second. But the first is kind of implied, well, not implied, but is associated with that.
Yeah, it's still a lens of like what else is out there. But yeah, what are you working on? That if you're throwing all your time into a commodity, like the idea would be like that's a rough bet unless again you're doing a value play that's really unique. So yeah, I think any of these things that help you see the landscape is helpful. And
so now that we got that, so do people actually do them? Like I asked this in the social medias a while ago, and some people responded here and there, but like you I know read a lot of Harvard Business Review, and I feel like in that world of management consultancy stuff, like I don't think it's come up before, but it's like there to use. It's fully available.
Yeah, it's there's a subculture of Wardley mappers that geek out and play Dungeons and Dragons and do maps and things like that. Like whatever.
Oh, that's
live
a
your
good
life.
idea.
So
Yeah.
it's
They use
no,
Notion.
I haven't seen it come up in
Yes.
like big scale, but it gets name dropped here and there. And whatever. There's like a dozen strategy tools people use. I think the key is use something. If it's just like, here's our mission statement, we're going to go build stuff. We got to do
Yeah.
better than that.
This is what I feel. No.
Yeah.
The Ouija board? No.
Yeah, I
Wait,
mean, that centricity of purpose matters, and people need to know what they're heading towards here.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think is the state of like the strategy thought technology world? Right. Like I was saying, you read a lot in this space, and you've encountered it at many organizations, and I think have we really like evolved strategy beyond like kind of like basic Michael Porter, maybe Bain thinking, where you're just identifying like, why do people give us more money? And how do we deal with our suppliers? Like just some kind of, let's just get differentiation or lower prices. I mean, that's kind of like the Michael Porter binary. That's
right.
Sort of like page 1, now we're done. And then I'm going to write 500 more pages.
I even see, the fundamentals of, where to play and how to win still seem to be a huge part of like, what are we doing? What can we be first or second in? How do we develop more value at, lower cost than anybody else? Like that's still the fundamentals of a lot of these things is, and yeah, as you say, it might be based on quality, it might be based on distribution. It might, like some of those things seem fairly timeless. I haven't seen a lot of disruption to some of these. I think the disruption is the pace, and that the only competitive advantage left is, are you learning faster than your competitors? Like that's about it at this point. Am I learning and iterating faster and getting value out faster? Other than that, everything that can feel like a moat is pretty shallow.
And then have you experienced like a strategy trickle down actually working? Like at a big company, you've got like a huge, strategy and vision and stuff. And like when it let's say it goes down, I don't know, 5 levels to people actually programming or doing something. Like how do you make that actually work instead of it kind of like losing fidelity or just getting all fuzzy on the way down?
Yeah. That sort of cascading intent is desirable. They're like, hey, here's our top company goals. And somehow every individual at the company resonates with them, which is never true. But many of these are like, that's not even my area, or that's so vague that, I could walk the dog and say I'm achieving this goal. Like, I don't know how to connect to it. So what I try to do even in my team is like, look, there's Google Cloud goals. There's things in my area, but then I have specific OKRs and things that we've set that I try to write them like a human would talk about. So this isn't just like synergize the collaboration between like, oh no, don't use any of those words. So what are we trying to do? How can I make sure everybody on the team clicks into some of these key results? That's my criteria, is that this is like, you should be able to look at this and go, yeah, if I do my job right, I'm doing these things. And that's super crisp. And we talk about it and be like, let's have examples of it. So to me, just like vague strategy deployment where you send out a email and go, here's our 4 goals. We'll check in December. Pretty terrible. That it's got to be like, let's talk about it. How do we actually achieve this? Why does this even matter? Make this real to me. And to me, we talked at the very beginning about even, good managers. Good managers contextualize.
Right.
Most of my entire professional shtick nowadays came from a Gartner event I went to like 7 years ago now when I was at Pivotal. And the speaker said this. He goes, look, the world doesn't need more information right now. It needs more context and confidence. And that shapes most of what I think about, which is how do I give people more context about stuff, and how do I give them confidence that they can do it too? And even the strategy stuff, or like a good manager gives their team context and confidence. Like that's a good manager. So that's my mental model for a lot of stuff, is don't just throw information out there.
I have 2 more questions related to all the reading you do. One's a quick one, and that is, do you have any hot tips for any underappreciated sources where you consistently get good articles from?
Good question. Cote already outed me as a Harvard Business Review reader, so that's something.
Yes, an outing.
Lately, and again, it depends on what you like doing. Daily.dev is great. It's an aggregator of a bunch of tech, posts, not just news, but just like interesting stuff. So, I read that twice a day of just like what's going on, what's hot right now. things like Tech Meme and others still do a great job of rolling up, what's actually happening in tech right now and places like that. And I still subscribe to a handful of newsletters that, of course, software defined and others, but who's also aggregating. And that's, I don't want to pay attention to every social channel. I get pushed like, hey, try out this one, go hang out on here. I don't want to. I barely keep track of the ones I have, and between LinkedIn and X and RSS feeds, I'm catching most of it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, and then newsletters and email, like I think I'm catching a lot of stuff. And so I don't need to be everywhere. I want to be in on Reddit. I just can't. I don't want to invest myself personally in more time and things. So, I rely on aggregators and feeds, but daily.dev is great. And then, again, even just keeping X up with all day, I usually get a half dozen links just from that.
Fascinating. And then my other question is about, we're talking so much about short-term reading and short-term knowledge. I'm wondering if there are any articles or books that you've read that have had a lasting impact on you that you remember months or years later.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I read, 40 to 50 books a year.
Wow.
On purpose. And that's just because I block off 20 minutes a day to read. It's not, anything superhuman. It's just you gotta make the time for it. And so there's certain professional books. Some of it is just, brain candy to just be like, hey, murder mystery. I'm not planning on killing anyone, so I'm not picking up any skills here, but relaxes me. Reading a great book on World War II right now. So I read those, but then there's usually a business book in there. But a lot of the ones I've read on persuasion and strategy, Persuasion is a great book. There's other books on messaging. Messenger is a great book. There's ones on like, how do you actually resonate? That so many people get frustrated that they have really interesting things to say and nobody cares. And like, what? That's a you thing. Unfortunately, you don't want to hear that. I don't care that your points are great. You communicated poorly. You're not setting it up in a story. You're not connecting with your audience. And so I've become a bit of a student of persuasion and messaging, just be like, not to manipulate people, because I'm not that talented, but just how do you do something that people care about? Like even when, we do customer briefings or things, I have like 8 seconds to have their attention at the beginning. That's like science. Cool. What am I doing in those first 8 seconds? And instead, plenty of people will be up there. So I was born in Topeka. I was like, nobody cares about any of that information. Like, I'm going to forget you the minute this conference thing is over, but I'll remember your 2 points. So get to your points. And so just learning how to click with people, how to resonate, how to tell a story, how to set up conflict. If you're, like to me, if you do a presentation, if you do a talk and somebody isn't feeling butterflies, like nervousness in the first couple of minutes, you haven't done a good job. Let's have some tension, anxiety. Hey, AI is changing your job completely. You'll probably be out of work in 3 months. Okay, so my name's Richard. And then like, what the hell? And do it authentically. Don't do it clickbaity. But you got to create tension or nobody cares. What problem are you solving? Why am I sitting in this chair listening to you? And so most of us don't know that by nature. We have to learn it. We got to watch other people. And so read a number of just, great things in that space. I think most of us in this field would be better off if we could focus on communication better.
Awesome. I'm going to find these 2 books, Persuasion and Messenger.
Yeah, both great.
Cool. I said 2 questions, but I thought of a third because you read, bonus one. You kind of halfway mentioned speed reading, and also this 40 to 50 books a year is cluing me into how fast you read. Do you have any tips around that?
Of speed reading?
How do you read so quickly?
Yeah, books I don't typically speed read unless it's like, okay. Last year I read a great one on data science, but about a chapter in, I'm like, this is a lot. Like, I don't think I'm going to do all these exercises or download this spreadsheet. So I'm going to read this one and go through, first sentences of paragraphs and look for key points and highlight things. And so that's usually my speed reading technique, is I'm looking to cut through rough, like headlines, first sentences of paragraphs, maybe closers. Am I getting the gist? And if I pause and go, I don't know anything I just read. Okay, stop, reset through. But when I'm reading other good books, history books and biographies and things, it's nice to just curl up and
get immersed,
absorb it. And like, what is this? And usually one leads to another book. They mentioned something. What the heck is that? I read it this weekend. There was this World War II Pacific book I'm reading. It's tremendous. And they're mentioning all these submarine things. Like, I know nothing about these submarine battles. Oh, there's a book about it. Cool. That's on my wish list now. So I don't know, just an innate curiosity, I think makes us all more interesting and humble that we know nothing. And I just know I don't know a lot. So it's fun to keep learning new things.
That's fabulous.
All right. So last question. As we mentioned, you cover a lot of AI stuff. What's like the most recent AI tool that doesn't involve programming, right? It's just like a consumer grade tool that you've been looking forward to using more frequently. And you get bonus points if you don't actually know what you're going to do with it, but you're really desperate to find some way to use it because it would be fun.
That's a great use of a tool. Like a lot of these image and video tools, you're looking at like, I can make a video of everything. Like CAD's dueling. Like I don't even know what to tell this thing. So sometimes that happens. But to be honest with you, professionally, and I'll homer a little bit for Google, Gemini Deep Research is probably the most underrated thing we shipped in the last month. And what that is it's part of, whatever, the Gemini app where you go to the Gemini Google thing. I think it's Gemini Advanced, so it might require a subscription. But the idea is you could say like, hey, I just did it for a customer briefing. Hey, can you tell me the state of technology X? Or hey, I'm trying to plan a trip or whatever. And what it does, it comes up with a plan. Hey, okay, I think I need to look at this. Then it goes off to 50, 100, 1,000 websites, goes through them, and then gives you a summary at the end. That's a ridiculous way to do research. Like if I'm a paralegal, if I'm a student, I'm an academic, I'm in IT, and I go, what's going on with Kubernetes right now? An LLM doesn't have history, right? It has history from when it was trained. So if I'm talking to an LLM that was finished training last June, it won't know about Kubernetes 124. But how would it? It wasn't trained on it. This is different. This is then using Google search to go, here's everything about Kubernetes, feed it into an LLM to help summarize and things. It's an absurd research tool. And even everybody now can use the Google AI Studio to even go our Gemini 2 Flash thinking model, where you're seeing the thinking exercise, which is really freaky. Like, I'm going to do this. Let me try that. Let me try this. And it's showing you the way it's thinking. To me, I'm not using these tools to do my work. I'm using it as a thought partner. Are you helping me think through things? Like, even when I use coding tools, I don't want it writing all my code. I like coding. Like, I still want to do some of it, but I want you to help me figure things out and do stuff. And I think that's how most of us should see these AI assistance tools. It's not like, oh, good, I don't have to do any work anymore. I get to do better work, or I get to have a smarter person helping me out. And that's deep research is amazing. Google AI Studio, try out that thinking model for anything. Ask it to, how do I play Sudoku and win this game? Or how do I do whatever? People are trying all kinds of fun stuff.
How to select which Thai dish to get when you don't know anything about it. That would be fun.
What eyeglass frames look good on my 100%. Face? Yeah,
that's right. I'll take 3 pictures of my head and say, what kind of glasses should I get?
Just dress me up.
Make me an image and then a video of me wearing them.
Make me a video surfing with them on, like whatever you need to build up your confidence.
How would it look if I was riding on a dog?
In slow-mo, though, with like a star wipe, whatever you need.
That's right. All right. Well, I've got a lot of work to do tonight now, it sounds like, researching how to get glasses. Well, tell people where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, still Seroter.com, my last name. Is where I write my daily reading list. I post one interesting blog besides that per month. I try to screw around with tech, and you can find me on X at @rseroter, LinkedIn, same stuff. And other than that, I don't want a media empire like the Cote media empire, but I'm just trying to be in a few places.
Well, there's always the future. Your few places can turn into more places.
Anytime. That's right.
I think you've done a good job. I've done there must be a more polite way of putting this, but there's this idea of committing internet suicide. And I think I've done that a couple of times where I move my content around and stuff, but you've done a good job not doing that, which I think has advantages.
I don't have the motivation.
Right.
I'm a fairly consistent person.
I think it's just a tinker problem where I want to go do something, and then I'm just like, one day I'll migrate all those posts, and who knows? But it's good to don't break the URLs. Well, speaking of not breaking the URLs, this has been Software Defined Interviews, and if you want to get links to things we talked about, although I don't really put that many in here, but I'll at least put a link to Richard's site. You can go to softwaredefinedinterviews.com/93 and find it and figure out. If you've listened this far and you don't subscribe, you can figure out how to do that. And we've got a Slack channel you can join for Software Defined Talk and interviews. Lots of stuff in there. Lots of links that are shared. Maybe not as many as between Richard and I and other people, but there's tons of links and commentary from pretty much nerds. I would
Yeah.
say.
Best people.
Yeah.
Pretty exclusively,
Yes.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Pretty exclusively nerds. Yeah. All right. Well, with that, goodbye, pretty exclusively nerd listeners and others.
Bye. Thank you.